Disbelief in Dalton Thursday evening as Chicago's former mayor, who was hired to investigate Dalton Mayor Tiffany Henyard's administration, revealed the shocking spending of taxpayer dollars.
Drama in Dalton. Credit card transactions amounting to thousands of dollars without explanation and millions more owed to vendors.
A bombshell report highlights just how much financial trouble the village of Dalton is really.
They say the village is facing financial disaster and they blame the mayor for mismanagement. She says this is all just political retribution.
No response to repeated interview requests. I tried to track down Dalton Mayor Tiffany Henyard in person today. Village employees told me she was.
Residents of Dalton and Thornton Township have long been aware of the community's financial struggles, but the shocking revelations uncovered by former Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot have exposed a fiscal crisis far worse than anyone could have imagined. The area now faces millions of dollars in debt, with a dire financial situation that has persisted for years. Frustrated citizens have called for Tiffany Henyard to resign from her dual roles as mayor of Dalton and supervisor of Thornton Township, but their pleas have fallen on deaf ears. Henyard has shown no remorse or willingness to address the growing accusations of corruption, favoritism, and financial mismanagement that have marked her tenure. Instead of working to resolve these issues, Henyard's administration has become a magnet for controversy, with claims of embezzlement, misuse of taxpayer funds, and reckless decision-making overshadowing any positive actions. Her apparent indifference to the concerns of her constituents has only deepened the community's frustration, fueling resentment and distrust. The announcement of an FBI investigation into her conduct has sent shockwaves through a community long accustomed to political dysfunction. As evidence of Henyard's actions continues to emerge, it paints a grim picture of governance, where personal agendas have consistently taken precedence over public welfare. Allegations of extravagant spending, including taxpayer-funded luxury vacations, expensive purchases, and wasteful projects, have intensified public outrage. Many believe that Henyard's focus has been on draining the resources of Dalton and Thornton Township before she leaves office. The revelations of fiscal mismanagement and unethical behavior go beyond misuse of funds. They reflect a broader failure in leadership and responsibility. Residents are left to wonder how one individual could so brazenly undermine public trust and dismantle the financial foundations of their community. A key moment came with Lightfoot's audit of Dalton's finances, which uncovered an astounding $36.5 million deficit in the village's general fund. This figure symbolizes the years of neglect and misappropriation that have pushed the community to the brink of collapse. Reports of public funds being used for personal indulgences, such as an $85,000 personal audit, have further fueled public outrage, cementing Henyard's image as a leader disconnected from the struggles of her constituents. Thornton Township, under Henyard's jurisdiction, has also suffered due to her actions, with essential services like insurance, transportation for seniors, and food assistance put at risk by a breakdown in administration. These hardships have had a direct impact on vulnerable populations, underscoring the human cost of leadership failures driven by personal gain. With the FBI investigation now looming, many residents view it as their last hope for justice and accountability. After years of stalled local efforts to address Henyard's unchecked power, the investigation has become a symbol of potential change. Henyard's refusal to engage with the mounting issues has deepened suspicions about her intentions, with critics accusing her of deliberately stalling while diverting public resources for personal benefit. Her absence from critical township meetings, especially those focused on resolving the insurance crisis, has only added fuel to the fire, as residents see it as a sign of her disregard for their well-being. Prominent critics, including trustees like Chris Gonzalez, have warned of the dangerous implications of such neglect, emphasizing that the issues at stake, particularly those affecting insurance and essential services, are not mere political disputes, but matters of life and death for many residents. The deteriorating situation has sparked calls for a complete overhaul of leadership, with hopes that Dalton and Thornton Township can eventually rebuild from the ashes of mismanagement and restore faith in local governance.
We've learned from multiple sources that federal agents are in fact interviewing witnesses as part of a possible investigation that may or may not result in charges.
The controversy surrounding Tiffany Henyard escalated as she became the target of numerous complaints, with some of the most disturbing allegations coming from local business owners. These entrepreneurs claimed their businesses were unfairly targeted and shut down simply for refusing to support political events promoted by Henyard. These accusations have painted a troubling picture of an administration accused of using its power for personal and political vendettas, rather than fostering a thriving and inclusive local economy. Business owners described an environment of fear and retaliation, where refusing to align with the mayor's political agenda led to sudden and often unjust regulatory actions. These actions range from arbitrary fines to outright closures, causing significant harm to local businesses. The impact has strained the relationship between Henyard's administration and the business community, deepening public distrust. Critics argue that such behavior reflects a troubling abuse of power, prioritizing personal and political gain over the economic health and independence of the very businesses that contribute to the town's prosperity. The ripple effect of these actions has extended far beyond the business sector. Residents have expressed outrage over what they see as a blatant disregard for fair governance and ethical leadership. Henyard's detractors have pointed to these incidents as yet another example of an administration that consistently places self-interest above the well-being of the community. This has fueled growing calls for greater transparency, accountability, and Henyard's eventual removal from office. These allegations, combined with mounting evidence of financial mismanagement and other scandals, have further alienated a significant portion of the public, reinforcing the belief that her leadership is no longer sustainable. While Henyard has denied any wrongdoing, maintaining that the attacks against her are baseless, her refusal to meaningfully respond to the growing concerns of business owners and citizens alike only deepens the crisis. This alleged misuse of power has added yet another layer to an already complex web of accusations, defining her controversial tenure in office. As the public backlash intensifies, many are left wondering if Henyard's administration can recover from this mounting wave of criticism or if these events will mark the beginning of the end of her political career.
Or retaliation. Both of the Dalton bars that were raided and shut down last night, we visited the day before as part of our ongoing investigation into allegations of political corruption in Dalton.
They just rushed in here, put police at the front door like they was doing a raid on the drug houses.
A team of Dalton police officers raided and shut down Pablo's Bar and Cafe and Rinky's Bar and Cafe, both located uncivilly about a block apart.
Everything going peacefully. Nothing going on. It's like 10 police cars came in and they start pushing customers from here. And he said, if you don't leave, we're going to lock you up.
Employees and owners say it's part of an ongoing campaign of harassment by Dalton Mayor Tiffany Henyard that is costing jobs and money. Their business licenses have been stripped by Dalton, but they've continued to operate with it.
After months of escalating controversy, former Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot was appointed to investigate the alleged illicit activities of Tiffany Henyard, marking a critical turning point in the ongoing saga. Henyard's response was swift and combative, with her administration seemingly doing everything in its power to undermine Lightfoot's efforts from the very beginning. Rather than addressing the mounting issues facing Dalton and Thornton Township, Henyard sought to deflect responsibility, shifting blame onto the village trustees. This move only deepened the divisions within the local government and further alienated Henyard from an already skeptical public. Lightfoot's investigation revealed a troubling landscape of questionable financial practices, allegations of corruption, and a pattern of mismanagement that pointed directly back to Henyard's administration. Despite the growing body of evidence, Henyard continued to deny any wrongdoing, dismissing the inquiry as a politically motivated attack designed to tarnish her reputation. However, her strategy began to unravel as Lightfoot's findings painted a damning picture of taxpayer funds being misused, unexplained deficits, and financial irregularities that could not be easily ignored. Henyard's efforts to discredit the investigation only complicated matters. From questioning the legitimacy of the probe to launching counter-accusations against trustees and other local officials, her aggressive tactics failed to quell public outrage. As Lightfoot's investigation gained momentum and troubling details continued to surface, the divide between Henyard's supporters and her critics grew wider. Her defenders insisted that she was the victim of a political smear campaign, and that the systemic problems she inherited were to blame for the village's financial woes. On the other hand, an increasing number of residents and local officials demanded accountability, viewing Henyard's deflections as desperate attempts to avoid responsibility. the fallout from Lightfoot's investigation sent shockwaves through the community. Public trust in Henyard's leadership plummeted, and each new revelation seemed to confirm the worst fears of her detractors. Calls for her resignation grew louder, accompanied by protests and demands for immediate action to address the financial chaos and restore integrity to local governance. Despite this mounting pressure, Henyard remained defiant, refusing to step down and instead doubling down on her claims of innocence. Her resistance only fueled the perception that she was unwilling to take accountability for her administration's actions. As the investigation continued, Lightfoot uncovered deeper issues within Henyard's administration, including a lack of transparency in decision-making, allegations of favoritism, and unethical conduct. These findings not only strengthened the case against Henyard, but also highlighted the broader challenges facing Dolton and Thornton Township. The investigation underscored the urgent need for structural reforms and competent leadership to address the dysfunction that had taken root in local governance. The impact of Lightfoot's investigation reverberated beyond Henyard's office, becoming a rallying cry for those seeking to reclaim their community from the grip of political dysfunction. For Lightfoot, the investigation highlighted the importance of transparency and accountability in governance, even as she faced criticism from Henyard's loyalists and political factions determined to protect their interests. As Henyard's administration faltered under the weight of Lightfoot's findings and growing public scrutiny, one thing became clear. The story of Tiffany Henyard and her time in office had evolved into more than just a local issue. It had become a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked power, the consequences of failed leadership, and the enduring resilience of a community determined to demand better. Whether or not Henyard ultimately faced legal and political consequences for her actions, her legacy was already defined by the scandals that overshadowed her tenure and the profound lessons they imparted about accountability, transparency, and the responsibilities of public office.
Dalton Mayor Tiffany Henyard at the helm of the village's first packed meeting since Dalton trustees passed a resolution last month requiring her to turn over the village's financial records and asking the FBI to investigate her alleged misuse of village funds. The mayor admits to a $2 million deficit, but trustees say it's millions.
Tiffany Henyard's attempt to involve the FBI in investigating her own behavior was both audacious and ultimately a deeply embarrassing move that exposed the fragile dynamics within her administration. Likely aimed at asserting her innocence or deflecting scrutiny from local investigations, Henyard's proposal to invite federal intervention was swiftly countered by the Board of Trustees, who voted decisively to override her veto. This action underscored the growing divide between Henyard and local government officials, highlighting their lack of confidence in her leadership. To many residents, Henyard's push for FBI involvement appeared less about seeking truth and more about attempting to control the narrative. Critics saw it as a desperate attempt to distract from the mounting allegations of corruption, financial mismanagement, and ethical breaches that had come to define her tenure as mayor. The trustees' decision to override her veto not only reaffirmed their commitment to maintaining local oversight, but also emphasized the increasing isolation Henyard faced within the halls of power. The optics of the situation were particularly unflattering. Henyard's proposal to bring in the FBI was viewed by some as an implicit admission of the gravity of the issues she faced, while others saw it as an effort to deflect accountability by shifting the focus to a higher authority. However, the trustees' quick and decisive vote to nullify her veto sent a clear message of defiance against what they considered a misguided and futile maneuver. This episode added yet another layer of controversy to an administration already mired in scandal. Henyard's detractors seized on the moment, framing it as further evidence of her inability to effectively govern or navigate the political landscape of Dolton and Thornton Township. Observers pointed out how this move illustrated Henyard's growing tendency to prioritize self-preservation over genuine leadership and problem-solving, especially as her administration became increasingly embroiled in allegations ranging from extravagant spending to the misuse of taxpayer funds and neglect of essential community needs. The community's response was telling. Residents expressed their frustration over what they saw as a spectacle that had replaced functional governance. With local services under strain, rampant financial mismanagement, and trust in government institutions at an all-time low, many felt the priority should have been addressing these immediate issues rather than pursuing what they viewed as a performative distraction. For the Board of Trustees, Their decision to override Henyard's veto wasn't just about rejecting an ill-conceived proposal. It was a statement of their commitment to maintaining local control and accountability during an escalating crisis. The trustees aimed to take charge, stabilizing a fractured administration and preventing further disruption caused by Henyard's erratic decision-making.
Their resolution.
The veto message is related to the secret scrutiny meetings, yes, that the Board of Trustees have.
The trustees vowed to override her veto. One of them, Kiana Belcher, sitting at the meeting with her portrait because she says it was removed from the wall of Village Hall.
And this is just a process to drag it along, but everybody sees what's going on.
The village, under Henyard's leadership, is cracking down on access, pushing media at tonight's meeting to the very back of the room, almost out of sight of public comment from residents. But their voices were loud and clear.
You lied to us as residents. You do not stand for me. And I want you to step down as mayor today and save our village from this deficit that you have caused.
The mayor can blame everybody for what's going on, but she has to look at herself. Nobody told her to get on TV and lie like that.
Everybody cares about the person that's making the mess.
Henyard placing the blame elsewhere.
But only judge when you got both sides of the story, not one side narrative, which is negative narrative.
Tiffany Henyard has consistently positioned herself as an innocent figure, framing the growing criticism against her as nothing more than prejudice directed at her identity as a black woman in politics. She has repeatedly dismissed allegations and accusations as part of a broader narrative of discrimination, portraying herself as the target of unfair attacks. This strategy of deflection has been a cornerstone of her public response to the mounting controversy surrounding her leadership. Henyard's tendency to downplay criticism and cast herself as a victim of bias has been a key element in her attempts to navigate the storm of scrutiny that has surrounded her tenure. However, one of the most glaring issues that Henyard has been reluctant to address is her now infamous trip to Las Vegas. The trip, which has become a focal point in the ongoing investigation into her conduct, has raised serious questions about her use of public funds. Allegedly, Henyard spent thousands of taxpayer dollars on lodging, meals, and airline tickets during this trip, leading to accusations that she misappropriated public resources for personal indulgence. Despite the growing public outcry over the expenses associated with the Las Vegas trip, Henyard has refused to provide any meaningful response to inquiries about the details of the spending. The lack of transparency surrounding this trip has only fueled suspicions and deepened public distrust of Henyard's leadership. Critics have pointed to the lavish nature of the expenses, which seem to stand in stark contrast to the financial challenges facing the community she was elected to serve. The trip, along with other questionable expenditures, has become emblematic of the larger issues of financial mismanagement and ethical lapses that have plagued Henyard's administration. Yet, instead of addressing the concerns head-on, Henyard has chosen to remain silent on the matter, leaving the public with unanswered questions and a growing sense of frustration. Her refusal to respond to inquiries about the trip has led many to view her as more concerned with defending her image than with providing accountability to the very people who elected her. While Henyard has framed her critics as prejudiced and motivated by racial or gender-based biases, her silence on such significant issues has only served to heighten the perception that she is evading responsibility. By failing to explain the expenses incurred during the Las Vegas trip, she has left herself vulnerable to further allegations of misuse of power and resources. For many residents, this lack of transparency and accountability has further tarnished Henyard's reputation. As the controversy surrounding the trip continues to unfold, it has become a symbol of the broader challenges facing Henyard's administration. Her unwillingness to engage with legitimate concerns about her conduct has only deepened the sense of alienation among those who are already disillusioned with her leadership. Despite her efforts to frame herself as a victim of bias, the unanswered questions about the Las Vegas trip have made it increasingly difficult for Henyard to maintain her position as a leader who is both responsible and trustworthy. In the eyes of many, her failure to address the issue head-on has eroded the credibility of her claims of innocence and deflection. As the investigation into her actions continues, the Las Vegas trip remains a key point of contention that could have long-lasting consequences for Henyard's political future. Rather than offering clarity or taking accountability, Henyard's continued silence on the matter risks cementing her legacy as a leader who evaded scrutiny and failed to live up to the expectations of those she was elected to serve.
As you heard me speak today in my boardroom,
those charges are for you. You didn't go to Las Vegas? What is that? You don't know if you were in Las Vegas? You applied for a spot to Las Vegas? No. You're not going to answer how that $10 has been spent. That seems fine. Wouldn't answer about Las Vegas.
You asked me a question. Okay, you answer earlier this time, this month. This is what you got this month, right? Y'all all similar to energy. So guess what? I am.
That's what I am the leader. They want to hear from the mayor. If y'all ain't learned that yet.
Of course I'm gonna give away $1 million to help you pay your mortgage and your rent. Of course I am.
The mayor, not the trustees that don't do nothing, that only run their mouth. We get screwed down in the meeting. For what? Loving on people, showing them that they matter to us. We going through the fighters for y'all. Black History Month. As the first African American female mayor's office. Of course, I'll make that screw. Y'all should be ashamed of y'all because y'all black. Y'all are black. Y'all sitting up here beating and attacking on a black woman that's in power. Y'all should be.
When it was revealed that Tiffany Henyard had embezzled millions of dollars from the general fund, the scandal rocked the community to its core. The revelation was nothing short of explosive, raising serious questions about her leadership and ethics. These findings were particularly damning, given that they were only the tip of the iceberg. Many speculated that there were even more instances of embezzlement and financial misconduct still lurking beneath the surface, yet to be uncovered. The sheer scale of the alleged theft left residents in disbelief, as they grappled with the idea that the leader they had trusted with the community's well-being had so blatantly exploited her position for personal gain. In the aftermath of this bombshell, Henyard's response was swift but deeply telling. She appeared to vanish. As the allegations of embezzlement mounted, she seemingly disappeared from the public eye, refusing to respond to repeated attempts by news outlets to contact her for comment. Journalists and reporters, eager to get a statement from the embattled mayor, were met with silence. Henyard became a ghost, avoiding the very media outlets that had once been eager to cover her every move. This sudden disappearance and refusal to address the mounting crisis only added to the growing sense of frustration and anger among residents. For many, Henyard's absence spoke volumes. Rather than confronting the allegations head-on or attempting to salvage her reputation through transparency, she chose to retreat, seemingly uninterested in taking accountability for her actions. Her avoidance of the press only deepened the community's sense of betrayal, leaving residents wondering how someone who had so brazenly mismanaged public funds could then hide away when the truth came to light. The news outlet's relentless pursuit of Henyard for answers stood in stark contrast to her reluctance to engage with the situation. As calls for transparency and accountability grew louder, Henyard remained elusive. Her refusal to explain the specifics of the alleged embezzlement, or to offer any sort of public apology or defense, painted a picture of a leader who had no intention of facing the consequences of her actions. This absence from the public eye only amplified the perception that Henyard was trying to evade the fallout from her scandal-ridden administration. The lack of a public response was also seen as a strategic move on Henyard's part to avoid further damage to her reputation. By disappearing, she avoided answering tough questions about how millions of dollars had gone missing under her watch. Residents, who had already grown disillusioned with her leadership, were left to fill in the gaps, often speculating on the true extent of the financial mismanagement and possible corruption. The community was left in the dark, with no answers coming from the very person who should have been accountable to them. As time passed and Henyard remained out of sight, the calls for accountability only intensified. Her disappearance from the public eye had the opposite effect of calming the storm. It made her appear even more guilty in the eyes of many. By failing to respond to the allegations and staying out of the public's view, Henyard reinforced the perception that she was trying to avoid responsibility rather than confronting the issue directly. The scandal, fueled by her silence, continued to gain momentum, and Henyard's reputation was irreparably damaged. In the end, Henyard's choice to vanish in the wake of such a monumental revelation left her political career hanging by a thread. Rather than taking the opportunity to address the accusations, offer a defense, or take steps to restore some measure of trust, she retreated into silence, further alienating the very community that had once placed their faith in her. Her disappearance became emblematic of an administration marked by neglect and evasion, with the fallout from her actions continuing to haunt her long after she chose to hide from the reality of her scandalous conduct.
General fund for day-to-day operations in the red with $3.65 million. Police department expenditures up 21%, with 2 officers paid more in overtime pay than regular pay. As of June 18th, 589 checks totaling more than $6 million approved but not sent to vendors. 6 different credit cards with receipts rarely provided, and purchases under investigation, including $40,000 in charges to Amazon.
You may hear a number of things from me. But what can I assure you, the information did share, that we're putting our name into our record of financial ourselves.
I knew we were broke. And the way she broke it down and just let the other residents hear what was really going on, because Tiffany Henyard always talk about fake news and this.
In addition to the revelations about the village's excessive use of credit cards, Mayor Tiffany Henyard continued to avoid scrutiny. When I attempted to ask her about the allegations, she failed to answer any of my questions. Despite repeated requests for an interview, I was informed that she was not in the building. When I tried to meet her in person at the village office, staff told me she wasn't available and gave no indication of when she might return. A day later, during a packed community meeting on Thursday night, the village trustees took the opportunity to publicly emphasize the facts, making it clear that Tiffany Henyard had failed to demonstrate true leadership. They presented evidence that Henyard had used public funds to support her extravagant lifestyle, painting a stark picture of a leader who had prioritized personal indulgence over the welfare of the community. The trustees' remarks underscored the growing frustration and disillusionment with Henyard's leadership, further highlighting the widening gap between her actions and the needs of the people she was elected to serve.
Found the village's credit card spending is out of control. Mayor Tiffany Henyard didn't respond to any of my requests today, and I'm told she's not in the building. No response to repeated interview requests. I tried to track down Dolton Mayor Tiffany Henyard in person today. Village employees told me she wasn't in the office and didn't say when she would be, a day after this. A packed community meeting Thursday night, outburst after
Tiffany Henyard appears to have found new allies in the legal industry, especially after firing her former top assistant, Keith Freeman. In a bid to shield herself from growing inquiries, Henyard has taken steps to insulate herself, even going so far as to have her criminal defense attorneys attend board meetings. Sitting by the mayor's side in a position usually reserved for the village attorney, the 2 criminal defense lawyers, Bo Brindley and Ed McDavid, watched the proceedings closely, including the board's private executive session. The ongoing FBI corruption probe into Henyard looms large, and the irony of her current situation is not lost on many. Henyard, however, has continued to maintain her stance, claiming that she is the one doing all the work while accusing the trustees of wasting taxpayer money by investigating her. In a move that has further raised eyebrows, Henyard appointed Louis Lacey, a former Dalton Village Council member who had been fired for insubordination, to a new and even more significant role. Trustees have argued that this appointment was unlawful, especially considering the circumstances surrounding Lacey's previous dismissal. At the first meeting after Lacey's appointment, it was revealed that Henyard had failed to file any financial reports for the past 2 years, prompting action from the board to freeze $135,000, money normally allocated for outstanding fees and traffic penalties. Henyard's actions have begun to alienate some of her former supporters, a shift made evident by the appearance of a whistleblower from the Thornton Board of Trustees. Lacey himself faced a federal arraignment on bankruptcy fraud charges, accused of lying under oath to conceal assets and income from creditors. His defense insists on his innocence, arguing that the government is simply overcharging him for media attention. The fallout from this scandal has begun to ripple through Henyard's administration, with some trustees expressing their concerns publicly. One of the most significant shifts in the political landscape came when a former ally of Henyard from the Thornton Township Board, now acting as a whistleblower, released a statement detailing how, over the past 2 years, Henyard had used her position to manipulate employees, vendors, and residents to expand her influence, all while presenting a false image of success funded by taxpayer money in both Thornton and Dalton. Henyard has continued to deny any wrongdoing, calling her critics attention-seeking and claiming that they are out to tarnish her reputation. Meanwhile, tensions in Dalton remain high as Henyard's actions have further escalated the crisis. The latest controversy involves her appointment of Michael A. Smith, a new assistant to the position of village administrator, with a $100,000 annual salary. Smith, 34, has a controversial past, having been charged with at least 8 different crimes over the years, including official misconduct and domestic violence. In 2012, he was involved in a scandal in which a young trustee in Dixon resigned after pleading guilty to impersonating a police officer. Smith had also been employed as an assistant dean at Thornton Fractional High School in 2018, further adding to his controversial background. With the situation continuing to deteriorate, it's clear that Henyard's leadership is under increasing scrutiny. What was once a strong base of support is now fragmented, and her decisions, especially her questionable appointments and actions, are only deepening the divide. The legal and political battles she faces are far from over, and as the community demands accountability, Henyard's fate remains uncertain. Stay tuned for future updates on this ongoing story, and feel free to share your thoughts in the comments below.